Hey 302, I'm Jackie Ferris. This week we are in historic Newcastle, checking out the Newcastle Courthouse. This was Delaware's first court and first capital. So much history has happened right here, and we're going to unpack it. Get ready to take a trip back in time. The 302 is headed your way. Hey 302, we are at the Newcastle Courthouse, a place that has many titles, being one of the first assemblies, one of the oldest courthouses in the country, and so much history happened right here. And we're joined by site manager Cindy Snyder to talk a little bit about all this history. And I don't even know where to begin, only to say that it started out as it was a courthouse initially, right?
Yes. We started out here as a courthouse. The building is 1732, same year George Washington was born. And we started as the first court in Delaware and the first Capitol building, colonial Capitol. And later we will become the first state capitol in 1776. But we do have a courthouse here that was previous to this building. And when William Penn arrived in Delaware in 1682, he landed first here in Newcastle before he went up to claim his Pennsylvania province. So all of Delaware became the three lower counties of Pennsylvania. William Penn ordered that a court be built on this site. So by 1689, we had a two-story court built here, right here. It burned down in 1729, and this court of 1732 was built on top of it. We have been a court until 1881, and then the county seat moved to Wilmington, so all the courts went up there. Before that period, we handled both the state courts and the federal courts. This building has been in continual use since 1732.
That's amazing. Now, I know that when you say that the newer version of the courthouse is built on the bones of the courthouse, you actually have a window over here where you can look at the footprint, right?
Yes. You can look down our little window there in the bar, and what you can see is a footprint of that building. The first floor was stone, and that's where the jail cells were. So we have 4 jail cells actually right underneath of us. And so when you look down there, you're looking into a corner of one of those jail cells.
So there's a lot of history made in this room.
Yes. There has been, of course, all the trials, early trials in Delaware, both federal and state, and 2 important trials that were held here. One was the trial of Thomas Garrett, who was Delaware's most prominent abolitionist, helping well over 2,700 fugitive slaves to escape to the north to freedom. He and John Hunn were accused of aiding and abetting a slave family from Maryland to escape through Delaware and into Pennsylvania for freedom. He was brought to trial here, and of course it was federal court. At that time, the Supreme Court justices also did the federal courts throughout the nation. So the Fifth Circuit Court was handled by Chief Justice Roger B. Taney of the Supreme Court. So he heard the trial of Thomas Garrett. Thomas Garrett was found guilty on all counts. And as a result, he had to make restitution to the slave owners, which was a lot of money. And also, he lost everything he owned, all his personal property, everything. But the thing with Thomas Garrett, he was so absolute in his belief that he said to Judge Taney and all that were in the audience, "You have taken everything I own, but tell every oppressed person they can come to Thomas Garrett. and I will help them.
That's amazing.
Yes, very defiant.
Now, I wanted to ask you, was there a little bit of controversy about moving the seat? You know,
Well, Wilmington had wanted the county seat moved up there for a very long time. And Newcastle resisted it because they wanted the courts here and they wanted the business that support businesses that courts brought. But the building was in terrible repair. And so they eventually won and they changed the county seat to Wilmington. It was a growing city, it had more commerce, it made more sense to have the courts up there.
and every once in a while, though, you still have cases here.
Yes, we occasionally have judges that come in here and hold different legal proceedings, hearings, always civil. We cannot have criminal cases here. But by doing that, that keeps us an active court, so to speak. And we are the fourth oldest active court in the nation.
That's really awesome. Now, I know that the area around here also has a lot of history, and I want to talk about that when we return.
My name is Tia Santana. I'm a ceramics instructor at the Center for Creative Arts, and we're getting fired up for the 302.
Welcome back. Now, Cindy, this was the first battleground of the colonial period, this area here?
Yes. In the 1600s, Netherlands, Sweden, and England were all vying for control of the Delaware Valley, basically for military control and for trade. At different times, we've had the Dutch in control, the Swedes in control, and then the English eventually take over completely. But in the beginning, in 1654, 51, the Dutch come in and they build a fort 2 blocks away from this building. It was called Fort Casimir. And as the Swedes or the English took over, they took over the fort, of course. And then it would go back to if one or the other would win another battle again. That whole area is considered probably the very first battleground in the New World. But it is not all gone. The parts of the fort that were above ground, of course, have disintegrated and are gone. But through archaeological exploration, we have found the original Fort Casimir. And a lot of it has been excavated, and it will be continued to be excavated. It will be open for the public to see. And we have found many artifacts from that fort, like grenades, bullets, pieces of metal, and even ceramics. And these items are on display in the courthouse in our exhibit called The Three Forts of Newcastle, where we talk about the different times where the Dutch, the Swedes, or the English are controlling the land and what they are doing.
Now, you're talking about the excavating of this fort. It's an ongoing process?
Yes, it is. Our original was done through a battlegrounds grant from the National Park Service. The Newcastle Courthouse is a part of the first state national park. And so hopefully we can get more grants to do more work out there. We have even had Dutch archaeologists come over and work with some of our other archaeologists on this because it's such a rare find. There is no other extant Dutch fort in Europe or in the Americas.
Now, what do some of the things that you found tell us about the people who wrestled over this area back then?
Life was very hard, of course. They're coming here and they're building up from nothing, what they bring over on their ships. The Dutch, when they came here, specifically, they came to establish a military installation. So they would have brought with them what you would normally have at a military installation. But of course they had to have housing, brewery, bakery, all those kind of things. As people, more settlers came in the area, they would build their community around the fort. Now, the Swedes were different. When they came here, they came for settlement. They intended to stay. And they came here hoping to build farms and businesses and have more land and a better life than they were having in Sweden and Finland. We had both. The Dutch also were here for commerce, and that was trade. They would trade beaver skin, other animal skins, and tobacco, which was grown here. So they came for different reasons. The English, when they came here, again, as they did with the rest of the nation, they came here to establish the English government and claim the Americas for themselves.
Now, do a lot of these folks that came here, do we have ancestors in the area that come back and trace their roots through this area?
Yes, a lot, I should say a few now of the original Dutch settlers, like the Van Dykes, and the Holcombs. They were original settlers that were here, and their families had stayed in this town for generations and generations. We still have some collateral descendants of these people still here. So we're talking families over 300 years old, 350 years old, that are still here in the community.
That's amazing, just a rich history to draw from.
Yes, yes.
Definitely. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about the Underground Railroad exhibit, and we'll talk about that when we return.
I'm Stephanie Lampkin, and we're making history on the 302.
Welcome back. We're talking about the rich history here at the Newcastle Courthouse. Now, Cindy, you have an exhibit on the Underground Railroad. First of all, I'm sure everyone out there knows what the Underground Railroad is, but if you could first kind of just give us an overview for folks who may need a refresher.
The Underground Railroad is not a railroad that people think it is. The Underground Railroad is a series of places and areas where enslaved people would travel and be helped along the way to escape freedom in the northern states. There are many, many routes on the Underground Railroad, and there are routes coming out of Maryland that go through Delaware and then on into Pennsylvania, some into Jersey, and then beyond. Delaware had an Underground Railroad, and two of its most prominent abolitionists were John Hunn and Thomas Garrett, who were both station masters on the Underground Railroad. So that means their job was to help these runaways get from place to place safely and help them with whatever they needed, say food, clothing, medical aid, whatever, and then get them to the next safe spot as they continued on their journey. They helped many people. It's documented that Thomas Garrett helped well over 2,700 fugitive slaves escape from the South through Delaware and into Pennsylvania for freedom. But in 1848, John Hunn and Thomas Garrett helped a runaway family from Centerville, Maryland. They were caught, they were brought to the jail here, and they were going to be sent back to their owners in Maryland. Thomas Garrett was called in to help the family, and he appeared before the Chief Justice here at the court and convinced the judge that there was no one there to declare they were runaways, and so without proof in Delaware, the presumption was always to freedom. So the judge released them in Garrett's company, Garrett knowing all along that they were runaway slaves. So he helps them get over the state line into Pennsylvania, and from there, other Quaker abolitionists help them to continue their journey to freedom. But what happens is Thomas Garrett and John Hunn are arrested for aiding and abetting fugitive slaves. They are brought to trial here in this court. This is a federal trial, and the judge presiding over this trial is Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Roger B. Taney. Thomas Garrett, his jury, they say, was spiked with mostly Sussex County slaveholders. So it was pretty much a done deal that he wasn't going to get a fair trial. And he was found guilty of helping these slaves to escape. And as a punishment, both he and John Hunn had to pay exorbitant fines for that time. And everything they owned, their farm, their business, even their personal belongings in their home, had to be sold to make restitution to the slave owners. So we tell that whole story of the Underground Railroad there. Also, Thomas Garrett helped Harriet Tubman. We know that Harriet Tubman came through this town at least 8 times, leading runaways to freedom. Thomas Garrett would be the person to help her. We know there was correspondence between the two of them. So he would know when she was coming and was prepared to help her in any way that was needed. Our exhibit also goes beyond the Underground Railroad period until after the Civil War. And we're looking at African Americans in Delaware that were trailblazers for Delaware. Trailblazers in the areas of education, medicine, religion, politics, and commerce. And these are people that normally would never be able to succeed in these areas in that period, but yet they fought for that right. And they worked hard, and they were able to be trailblazers and exemplary leaders in those areas. There are people like Judy Johnson in sports, baseball. There are Littleton Mitchell, who was a lawyer. There were other people that, well, for one thing, right now is our own U.S. representative. So there were a lot of people that had a chance to further African Americans in their journey for taking their rightful place in our society in all different areas.
So when people come to check out the exhibit, what kinds of, you mentioned that you knew that there were letters between Mr. Garrett and Harriet Tubman. Are we going to see some letters? I mean, what kinds of things are we going to see when we come to check out the exhibit?
Well, you won't see the original letters, of course. A lot of the letters were printed in what is considered the Bible of the Underground Railroad, and that is William Still's Chronicle of the Underground Railroad. And so many of the letters and newspaper articles and different things and messages and stuff like that and stories of the Underground Railroad are found there. So we are taking those and making displays of what was said between the two and the letters back and forth. And Thomas Garrett was very communicative with William Stills too, because William Stills in Philadelphia was sort of like a clearinghouse for runaways. People would go there, they would register their name, and hopefully maybe find other family members. And many were reunited because of his efforts.
That's amazing.
It
Now,
is.
if someone wants to come and check out the exhibits, what are your hours? And you're on Facebook, right?
Yes, we are. During Governor Carney's Phase 2 plan during this epidemic, we are limited on our days and times for tours, but we are open Wednesday through Saturday. We have 4 tour time periods that during those days. And on Sundays, we're open from 1 o'clock to 4, and we have 3 tours periods during those days. You can call here, make a reservation. We take 6 people at a time for a guided tour throughout the entire building. And we love to have people here. We love to talk to them about history. And you can get all this information if you go to our website on www.delawarehistory.gov/NCCH is for this museum. And also we're on Facebook under the Newcastle Courthouse Museum. And another thing that we have been doing, and you'll find this on Facebook too, is because of the COVID situation and problems in the schools with students who have to be at home now for their instruction, we have been doing videos and programming for teachers to help them out. And teachers can go in and look at our programs, and some of them are very short, others are about a half hour, and they can go in and look at that and use them in their classroom online if they want. Also, what we have been trying to do is every month do at least one public program. It has been a variety of things. We have done musical programs, we have done lecture series, and this coming week on Saturday at 2:30, we are doing one on World War II during the Blitz. And a Newcastilian here lived in London during that time. So she is going to do a program on what her life was like living in London during World War II during the German Blitz.
That sounds fascinating.
Oh, it is. It's a wonderful program.
Well, Cindy, thank you so much for sharing the history of the Newcastle Courthouse.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
We'll be right back. For more information on the historic Newcastle Courthouse, be sure to visit their Facebook page. That'll do it for this week's episode of the 302. We leave you now with some gorgeous aerial shots of this community. Until next time, I'm Jackie Ferris. We'll see you on the 302.